So Sasuke's not dead. You guys were right. But you're gonna wish that he was. See, in this lifetime, there are some fates that are worse than death. Some would argue that a lifetime in prison is worse than death. Some would argue that losing all of your loved ones is worse than death. Some would say that experiencing the horrors of war firsthand is worse than death. But what about living your life as a borderline mindless slave to a person who's trying to kill not only your daughter, but also your student? Do you think that fate is worse than death? Well, if you do, then Sasuke is currently living in a fate worse than death. Because here's the thing. For the last couple of months, I've been sitting on the take that I believe that Sasuke is gonna die in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, as I believe that his death would not only push the plot forward, but would also motivate some of the key characters in 2 Blue Vortex to reach the pinnacle of their power and character development. Sasuke's death would play a pivotal role in both Boruto and Sarada's life, and would also ironically act as a perfect full circle moment for his character, as the beginning of his character arc started with battling against Naruto, and the end of his character arc ended with saving Naruto's son. Genuinely, I believe that Sasuke's death would be the best way to repent for his acts as a terrorist during Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, as myself and many other people believe that Sasuke got off way too easily after the conclusion of the 4th Great Shinobi World War. And therefore, I've been theorizing about the different kinds of ways that Sasuke could have died in either the time skip or will die in 2 Blue Vortex for a long time now. Not because I'm rooting for it, but just because I believe plot-wise, it would be a good plot point. He's not Naruto, it would bring a lot of attention to the manga, and so on and so forth. However, it was revealed in Chapter 2 of 2 Blue Vortex, which just recently came out, that Sasuke isn't dead. Or at least prevailing evidence would make us believe that Sasuke isn't dead. However, it's not like Sasuke is at the Four Seasons. He's not somewhere using the one-arm no jutsu on Sakura. See, Sasuke is currently dealing with a fate that I believe is much worse than death. See, because while Sasuke is alive, he's being used by code. And used is actually a pretty kind term. See, Sasuke isn't just being used by code. Sasuke has been converted to a 10-tailed soldier, or a claw grime by code, and is existing as one of the hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers that code has at his disposal. So yes, while what we're gonna talk about today is how Sasuke is technically alive, that may not be the best thing, at least for him. Because today we're talking Sasuke is alive, and somehow that's worse. But before we get to doom scrolling on Sasuke's fate, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear me talk about the fate of some of your other favorite anime characters, guys, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. Or if you just want to hear me talk about anime characters in general, guys, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Who Talk is Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But before we get into all that, guys, today we got to talk about a brand new sponsor to the page, Soylent. Soylent is a company that makes plant-based protein meal replacement shakes. And yes, they're named after the food in the science fiction novel Make Room, Make Room, which was a sci-fi food made out of lentils and soy. However, in the 1973 movies, Soylent Green, Soylent was made out of humans. And so is the, I'm just kidding, there's no humans in it. That's not legal. Yet is one of my favorite sponsors because it makes lunch incredibly easy. Not only does every bottle come in at 20 grams of protein, but also every smoothie gives you pretty much 20% of every vitamin you need in a day. Vitamin C, B12, magnesium, you name it, it's in here. But not only do these shakes absolutely smash macros, but they also taste incredible. In a test with 40,000 people, these shakes routinely beat out animal and dairy-based shakes, in terms of taste, that is. When it comes to creaminess, smoothness, and taste, 40,000 people agreed that these shakes win. Not only that, Soylent is easy. It's portable, requires no refrigeration, and is shelf stable for over a year. You can enjoy it anywhere, anytime, no cleanup, no prep. And listen, when it comes down to a convenient, healthy, and delicious meal between my 2 videos that I film every day, this is my only choice, and this is my favorite flavor. Just crack it open, tip it back, lunch is served. So what are you guys waiting for? The first 500 people to use my link and use code HAMMER30 at checkout will get 30% off their first Soylent subscription today. This is about as easy as eating gets. So what does living actually mean? Does it mean higher cognitive function? Does it mean that you're still walking around and talking to your friends? Or does it just mean that your heart is still beating? This is something that we talk about all of the time in society, whether it be while talking about end-of-life care patients or unborn fetuses. When life stops and starts is kind of a contentious issue. And therefore, in my opinion, to call Sasuke's current existence life is kind of a stretch. However, with circumstances as they currently are in Boruto's manga, I believe that Sasuke is actually in a much better position than if he were to be dead. But what am I talking about here? Let's get into it. See, in chapter 2 of Boruto's 2 Blue Vortex, which just came out, we continued on with a battle between Code, Kawaki, Sarada, Team 10, so on and so forth. And this battle continued on by Code summoning more and more of his claw grimes, or his 10-tailed soldiers. And while the majority of these 10-tailed soldiers appeared to be very similar to each other, that is to say that they're amorphous blobs of 10-tails chakra with tails and claw markings all over them that allow them to crawl out of each other or back into each other, out of all of Code's soldiers, one soldier seemed to stand out. In fact, beyond seemed to stand out, did stand out. See, the thing about claw grimes or 10-tailed soldiers is that none of them have eyes. So how do they all see? Well, considering the fact that they're all made from 10-tails chakra and DNA, they're all incredibly talented in senjutsu. And while they may not be sages in the traditional sense, Madara being able to dodge a full-powered 4th grade shinobi World War Sasuke with no eyes should show you just how well having sage jutsu allows you to dodge in battle. However, midway through chapter 2, we were introduced to the first ever claw grime with eyes. Or I should say, with eye, because it was revealed that there was a claw grime with an eye, and that eye was no regular eye. No, that eye was one of the most powerful dojutsu known to men, the Rinnegan. Now, there's a lot about this claw grime outside of the fact that it has a Rinnegan that makes it different from all other claw grimes. One, the most obvious thing is obviously the Rinnegan, which we'll talk about in a second, but two, this claw grime is pointed out by Shikadai to appear to be superior. And when we consider the fact that the fighting tactic of every single claw grime we've seen up until this point has been to stand still and get cut in half, the fighting tactics of this claw grime are eerily similar to that of Sasuke. But also the fact that this claw grime has any fighting tactics whatsoever makes it superior. And the third and final difference between this claw grime and all other claw grimes is that this claw grime can talk, which is weird. And these 3 points about this 10-tailed soldier all point in the direction of this 10-tailed soldier being Sasuke. Now, the most obvious connection here between this 10-tailed soldier and Sasuke is the Rinnegan, because here's the thing. This claw grime very conveniently has its Rinnegan on its left side. And you want to take a quick guess and try to remember what side Sasuke's Rinnegan was on? I'll give you 2 seconds. 1, 2, it was the left. On top of that, Sasuke's 6-tome Rinnegan is currently the only Rinnegan in existence. Madara/Nagato's Rinnegan went to the grave with him and appeared to be blinded as he died. As we can see in Madara's death scene when he's talking to Hashirama, his eyes appear cloudy. It appears as though his Rinnegan have faded, which is why no one's ever dug him up and grabbed those eyeballs. Hagoromo's Rinnegan are obviously chilling with Hagoromo in some other dimension, and all other Otsutsuki Rinnegan, like Momoshiki's or Urshiki's, died with them, as Urshiki's body was not only trapped in the past, but also inside of a toad, and Momoshiki's body was all but obliterated by a massive Rasengan, which leaves one Rinnegan and one Rinnegan alone on the entire Earth, and that was Sasuke's. Now, I know what you're saying, Sasuke's Rinnegan was destroyed, and you're right. Sasuke's 6th-tome Rinnegan was stabbed by Boruto when he was taken over by Momoshiki after the battle against Ishiki, and thus in that moment it was presumed that the last remaining Rinnegan was gone. And it still might be. However, the reason that we're talking about this in the first place is because we have to talk about how a claw grime or a 10-tailed soldier would have acquired a Rinnegan in the first place. See, there's 3 ways that somebody can acquire a Rinnegan. The first way, and most common way, I guess, to acquire a Rinnegan is by combining the chakra of Indra and Asura. This is how Madara was able to awaken his Rinnegan after combining with Hashirama's cells after he die. However, this process takes decades. Madara wasn't able to awaken Rinnegan and heal his Izanagi blinded eye until he was well into old age. So this is kind of a difficult way to get a Rinnegan, especially when you consider the fact that Asura's reincarnation is currently floating in the Daikokuten, a dimension that Code doesn't have access to. Now, technically, does Code, through the power of his karma marking, have access to space-time ninjutsu? Yes, but Code, even though he wields Ishiki's white karma marking, doesn't have Ishiki's dojutsu like Kawaki, at least so far as we've seen, and thus Code has no access to Asura's chakra because Naruto is locked away. Now, is there technically tons of things coated with Naruto's chakra? Yes, in a very similar capacity to how Kabuto was like, hey, we can just grab Jiraiya's blood off of Nagato's chakra rods. It would be very easy to acquire Naruto's DNA from any of Ishiki's rods, or really from anywhere. Naruto has bled everywhere. Now, the other half of the stew required to make a Rinnegan would be Indra's chakra, which Code could absolutely have access to, as genuinely, finding Naruto's DNA would be much harder than finding Sasuke's DNA, because Code has been chasing after Sasuke for at least a year in the time skip. So if Code and Sasuke were ever come to blows and Code was able to cut Sasuke at all, boom, I have your DNA and I can leave. Then hypothetically, if Code was able to combine Naruto's DNA with Sasuke's DNA in one of his claw grimes, that claw grime could awaken a Rinnegan, so long as Code implanted a regular eyeball into it first. And maybe that process would be incredibly accelerated due to the fact that Claw Grimes are 10 Tails clones. So because of this, that Claw Grime was able to awaken the Rinnegan in maybe 2 years. And thus Sasuke is not only alive, but also not a Claw Grime. But that would be incredibly boring and would be kind of stupid plot-wise. Because genuinely, if the explanation for why that Claw Grime got a Rinnegan is that Code went on a little exploration for Naruto's DNA and managed to get a vial of Sasuke's blood, would you be happy with the explanation? Sure, it's technically a distinct possibility, but if Code figured out how to make a Rinnegan and a Claw Grime before either Naruto or Sasuke figured out that if they just kissed once, they would both awaken Rinnegan, that'd be kind of insane. Now, the second way that somebody can be given a Rinnegan is by being given one by Hagoromo. Now, as to whether or not this upgrade operates by Hagoromo literally taking your eye and upgrading it into a 6-tome Rinnegan or just a regular Rinnegan, or if your eye just upgrades if you have a Sharingan and you get Hagoromo's chakra, we don't know. Because here's the thing, Sasuke gets Hagoromo's chakra, just like Naruto in the 4th Great Shinobi World War. Because Naruto gets the yang side of Hagoromo's chakra, while Sasuke gets the yin side of Hagoromo's chakra. Meaning Sasuke gets the more imaginary control side of Hagoromo's chakra, and Naruto gets the I can control my body and heal things side of chakra. And so it's a very common misconception that Sasuke never got Sage of Six Paths chakra. He did. And therefore it's kind of hazy for us as to whether or not Sasuke's body just reacted to Hagoromo's chakra and awoke a 6-tome Rinnegan, or if Hagoromo was literally like, give me that eyeball, here's a new one. But regardless of how it works, it doesn't really matter. Because why on God's green earth would Hagoromo come down from whatever dimension he's currently chilling in to give a Claw Grime a Rinnegan? And there's technically a third non-confirmed way to get a Rinnegan. The third non-confirmed way to get a Rinnegan would be to make a Rinnegan. That is to say, like, in a lab with test tubes and cell culture. See, because here's the thing. We've seen ocular dojutsu created in a lab. Orochimaru made hundreds, if not thousands of base Sharingan for all of his Shin Uchiha clones. And then not only did he make a base Sharingan, but he also made an MS for the big bad Shin Uchiha. So if Orochimaru, who's probably the forefront of human science, was able to create base Sharingan and Mangekyo Sharingan, there's really no reason for us to believe that Code, as a member of Kara, who were the forefront of Otsutsuki science, wouldn't be able to create a Rinnegan. And therefore, possibly with this theory being correct, Sasuke could not only be alive, but also not inside of the Claw Grime, which is kind of a massive win-win for everybody except for people who like the plot to make sense. See, because let's say hypothetically Code has cracked the code on creating Rinnegan. Why wouldn't every single Claw Grime have a Rinnegan? Is making Rinnegan really difficult? Could he only pull it off once? That's kind of an annoying explanation. I mean, it would make sense. Creating a Rinnegan wouldn't be easy, but distinctly showing that the strongest dojutsu known to man can be created in a lab kind of destroys the entire universe. Because now what's stopping anybody from reverse engineering that technology? Now what's stopping people like me from theorizing that everybody will get a Rinnegan? It would be an objectively silly plot point that would kind of derail the seriousness of Boruto. And therefore, all three of the possibilities of a Claw Grime acquiring a Rinnegan kind of suck, which is why I lean towards the fourth option. The Claw Grime's Rinnegan wasn't created or manifested, but instead stolen. And that Claw Grime's Rinnegan is just the one Rinnegan that existed on Earth being passed to a separate entity. See, here's the thing. Obviously, we've already touched on the fact that the Claw Grime's Rinnegan is on its left side. But also in Chapter 1 of Two Blue Vortex, Code shows up in Konoha with a scar on his right eye. Now, while this is technically supposed to act as a foil to Boruto, who has a scar on his left eye, you know who else has a scar on their right eye? Kakashi. And you know what Kakashi did after he got his right eye slashed? He replaced it with a Sharingan. And we know pretty much for a fact that Code and Sasuke got in a fight about 2 years ago. As Code in Chapter 2 of Two Blue Vortex, when Boruto is talking about how he's gonna kick Code's butt, is like, oh yeah, you're gonna kick my butt? The guy who ran away from a fight without doing anything 2 years ago? And considering the fact that Code is injured and Sasuke isn't around, and Boruto ran from a fight against Code 2 years ago, it seems relatively obvious to everybody that the person that Code was battling against 2 years ago was Sasuke, not Boruto. And Sasuke isn't around. And we know in Boruto's other socket isn't Sasuke's MS. It's the Jogan. And there's a Claw Grime with a Rinnegan in its left eye. So what if the real reason that we haven't seen Code open his right eye yet? Oh wait, I'm dumb. I don't know left from right. Code lost his left eye. Boruto lost his right eye. The Claw Grime has the Rinnegan in the left eye. Whatever. This doesn't help when you're looking at yourself in a camera reflection. Which side is left? So regardless, there's a Claw Grime with a Rinnegan on its left side, Sasuke's side. And Code supposedly lost an eyeball in a battle against Sasuke 2 years ago, and we have yet to see if Code has actually lost that eyeball or even tried to open that eye. But if we're presuming that Sasuke is either dead or inside of that claw grime, it stands to reason that Code would take his other eye to replace the eye that Sasuke took from him. Kind of like a cyclical sense of justice. And what's wild is that there's more connections between this claw grime and Sasuke than just his Rinnegan. Before we move on, people are obviously going to ask the question, well, Sasuke's Rinnegan was destroyed, so how would the claw grime have a functioning Rinnegan? Well, one, we're not entirely sure how destroyed Sasuke's Rinnegan was. It's a possibility that a high level of medical ninjutsu could fix it. Just a level of medical ninjutsu that only Kara or somebody with a chakra bank as large as the Ten Tails would be able to figure out. There's also the possibility that Sasuke, upon fusing with a claw grime, had all of his exterior injuries healed, and thus his Rinnegan was brought back. As like we said, there's basically no entity of higher chakra force than the Ten Tails. So the concept of an eyeball that took a kunai to it being healed through the powers of the Ten Tails isn't crazy. But let's move on to the further connections between the claw grime and Sasuke. See, this claw grime, outside of having a Rinnegan, also fights in a way eerily reminiscent of Sasuke. See, when this claw grime, which seems solely focused on attacking Kawaki, mind you, comes into combat with Kawaki, it uses the abilities of Code's claw marks to teleport behind Kawaki. That is to say that there's a down 10-tailed soldier behind Kawaki with a claw marking on it. This superior claw grime pops out of that claw marking and gets behind Kawaki in a pose eerily reminiscent of how Sasuke would summon his Chidori to down spike opponents. Kind of like how Sasuke down spikes Naruto in their last battle at the Valley of the End. However, instead of using a Chidori here, the superior claw grime grabs Kawaki by the back of the neck and slams his head into the ground. And it's at this point that the superior claw grime does something else very interesting, and that is that it says the word Otsutsuki, which is weird, considering the fact that no other claw grime has ever talked. If we're assuming that the claw grimes are just little pieces of the Ten Tails sliced off and formed into guys, kind of, they shouldn't have the ability to talk. The Ten Tails can't talk. Naruto used his sensing ability to see whether or not the Ten Tails had any personality, and what he realized is that the Ten Tails was just an amorphous blob of hateful senjutsu chakra, which showed Naruto that there was no way to break through to the Ten Tails. Sorry, I went to go get a haircut. Where were we? So if the components used to make the Ten-Tailed soldiers or the claw grimes have no soul and no personality, how does this one specific claw grime have the ability to talk? See, because here's the thing, between the Ten Tails that we see in the 4th Great Shinobi World War and this juvenile Ten Tails, neither of them had the ability to say any words. And in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, all of the Ten Tails clones didn't have the ability to talk. So how on earth does this one claw grime that, as far as we know, is created from the juvenile Ten Tails have the ability to talk? The clearest and most understandable answer would be that somehow this claw grime has been humanized. But a lot of you who have read the chapter are probably saying this entire discourse is unimportant, because this superior claw grime that we saw was blown up by an explosion from Kawaki's karma marking, and therefore this claw grime is gone. And this is kind of true, kind of not. See, because yes, this superior claw grime is caught in a shadow possession jutsu by Shikadai, and then with the opportunity, Kawaki uses his karma marking to blast it off him. However, we never technically see this claw grime die. Yes, it gets blown up, and yes, there's an explosion that wraps around its body, but this claw grime falls backwards, and then we see the upper half of its body, its torso, encompassed in smoke. However, then the manga pans away from this supposedly dead superior claw grime to show that a bunch of other claw grimes have climbed out of each other and that the fight continues. And while we pan up to these other enemies, the superior claw grime disappears. That is to say that we never see it again. And while there is a possibility that it just died, that possibility would be kind of dumb. Because here, let's say for a second that the superior claw grime is killed by Kawaki. Unless at the end of this battle, all of the claw grimes grab each other's bodies and drag them back to the Kara hideout, there is now just a free-floating Rinnegan in Konoha. That hasn't happened since Nagato's death, and you could hardly say that Nagato's Rinnegan were free and floating, considering the fact Konan wanted to bring them back to the hidden range. So unless Code put a cursed seal on the claw grimes that operates like the side branch family's cursed seal from the Hyuga clan that seals this claw grime's Rinnegan away forever the second that it dies, if that claw grime is dead, what's stopping anybody, Kawaki, Boruto, Sarada, from snagging its Rinnegan and giving themselves an upgrade? And if you think people scream about how we should dig up Madara and steal his Rinnegan, imagine a claw grime with a Rinnegan just dies in Konoha and nobody takes that eye. You would hear from me about it, that's for sure. So what's the most likely scenario in all of this? Well, 1, that claw grime is not dead, and 2, that claw grime is at least partially Sasuke. See, because here's the thing, we're not entirely sure how claw grime are made. We just know that Code was able to take multiple pieces of the Ten Tails body off of the Ten Ten Tails to make an army of soldiers. However, since Boruto is still looking for the real hidden body of the Ten Tails, we know that it's not the entirety of the Ten Tails broken down. But these claw grimes look and operate differently from the Ten Tails clones that we saw in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, especially the one that can talk. On top of this, we also know that Code applied some kind of transformation to them, as when Boruto is trying to convince Code to destroy the army that he created, otherwise it will lead humanity into the worst possible future. Code is talking about how the Ten Tails are just entities that eat anything around them based on instinct, that hopes in one day they'll eat an Otsutsuki that will turn them into a divine trait. And Boruto says, well, that's usually the case, but now is no longer the case because of the transformation, and the transformation is in quotation marks, that you applied to them. Now, there's really two ways to take this phrase. One, you could say that Boruto is now saying that the Ten Tails, if they eat an Otsutsuki, will no longer form a divine tree, which wouldn't make sense. I don't know why Code would do that, considering the fact that all he wants is a divine tree. But the second way you could take this interaction is that Code has found a way to make sure that the Ten Tails no longer operates solely on instinct, and instead Code has found a way to humanize the Ten Tails to give it directive. And therefore Boruto isn't referring to the result, but the action, saying that the Ten Tails will try to eat anybody that they can in hopes that one day they'll eat an Otsutsuki, but now Code is able to point them in the direction of who to eat, as opposed to them just eating everything around them, which would make sense when we consider the fact that Code is trying to make this into a functional army. So how would Code accomplish this? Well, quite literally by humanizing these claw grimes, by either taking Ten Tails chakra or physical matter and coding it on top of a human being, or by injecting these claw grimes with human DNA. We don't really know. And here's the thing, there's a precedent for this, because there's no way that Code isn't aware of the fact that a Jinchuriki will always be stronger than the tailed beast. So if Code was trying to make the strongest possible army out of Ten Tails chakra and material, instead of taking wads of the Ten Tails and forming it into clones like they did in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, a better optimization would be to take the Ten Tails and to combine its chakra with humans in order to make pseudo Jinchuriki that would rise to a higher level of strength than the Ten Tails clones that everybody fought in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, which is kind of the only way we can explain the fact that the superior claw grime can talk. So in actuality, the superior claw grime, either having Sasuke's DNA or just being Sasuke, unfortunately makes a lot of sense. And not only does it make sense from the evidence that we have thus far, but also makes sense plot-wise. See, here's the thing. Currently, as it stands, a lot of people in Boruto have a rival that they're going to battle against. Himawari is predicted to be battling against Daemon. Boruto and Kawaki very naturally have their battle coming up. And while many would believe that Code and Boruto have a rivalry comparable to that of Boruto and Kawaki, it appears as though Boruto knows that he is substantially stronger than Code. And honestly, I believe it. But what's weird about all of this is that if we assume that Boruto is not only going to battle against Code, but also Kawaki and Shibai, that kind of puts Sarada in a weird spot, because who is Sarada gonna battle? See, many people, myself included, believed that Sarada's rival in the post-time skip era would be Ada. But Ada and Sarada are homies, with Ada going so far as to offer Sarada to grant one of her wishes to undo Kawaki's. So Sarada's not gonna be battling against Ada. So who is Sarada's rival? And then it struck me, Sarada's rival is Code. See, Boruto's gonna have his hand full with Kawaki, but if Boruto's so much stronger than Code, then that's not really much of a rivalry. However, Boruto is also much stronger than Sarada. Therefore, Sarada would be a really good rival for Code. And not only does this give Sarada plot importance, which she desperately needs and will probably get, but if we assume that Code either killed Sasuke or stole his eyeball and turned him into a claw grime, Sarada would have more reason than anybody else to fight Code. Not only would she be able to fight Code to steal back her father's eyeball out of Code's face, but she would also have an incredibly natural grudge against Code for either killing her father or turning him into a mindless monster. And since there is now a possibility that Sasuke's Rinnegan has been cured through the medium of being turned into a claw grime, there's also the possibility that Sarada would be able to take his Rinnegan. And therefore it makes sense to me that Sarada's rival is either going to be the superior claw grime or Code, or both. In this way, Boruto and Kawaki can focus on fighting each other without the distraction of Code. And thus, I think there's a developing subplot line of the fact that Code killed Sasuke to make a natural beef between Sarada and Code. Or Code turned Sasuke into a claw grime, because that's what we're talking about today. So, you tell me, what's worse, Sasuke being dead or Sasuke being the superior claw grime? Give me your answers down in the comments, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I'm not the one writing the story. Now, that doesn't mean I disapprove of it, but I'm not the one writing the story.